Welcome back to Crazy Canuck Truckin. Thank you everybody who's been following along. This is episode 2 with Lewellyn Melnyk. Please remember to rate, review, share, email, and something that's new is that there will be a subscriber portion if you want to help keep the show going and help offset some of the costs for me. Then if you go to the show notes, there will be a place there where you can sign up for a subscription. Thank you. There's a saying that's been going around lately that you are batting 1,000 in life situations if you are still here today.
Mm-hmm.
Every tough thing you've gone through, you have gone through, and you're still here today.
Yeah. And we all have those stories, right?
Yeah.
We all can think back. I mean, you and I, even before we were recording today, we're chatting about our own life experiences. We all have those stories. And so you're right. Connecting with each other can help us through all of those, for sure.
Yeah. One amazing thing I found in your book, and I don't know if I ever thought about it this way before. It's really, really cool. So there are times, as you're talking about, sometimes you need a little space. Sometimes you need to change things up a little bit. You need to put up a boundary. You need to put up a fence. And this is so cool. So, because we always think that if I put up a fence or put up a boundary, it's gonna the person's not gonna like it, you know. And I'm gonna read this. I'll read one paragraph that you had put in the book, and here it is, and I quote: "Here's another fence analogy for the city folk in the crowd. Boundaries, when put in the right place, are like putting up a fence to keep out your neighbor's dog who keeps shitting on your lawn. The dog doesn't know different. It just needs to take a shit. But when a fence is in place, the dog knows it can't duty on your green patch of backyard bliss anymore. The dog isn't really affected by the change because it still relieves itself anyways. The same can be said for setting boundaries with people, places, or things. People may or may not notice, but they likely won't be affected by your additional space. You will, however, see a benefit to nurturing your mental health and avoiding those unhealthy triggers. Boundaries can look different for everyone. It can mean putting work away at 5 p.m. isn't always possible on the farm, and maybe looks more like 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or later in the busy seasons. It can mean shutting off your TV a couple hours before bed and prioritizing sleep. It can also mean saying no to another task you've been asked to take on when you are already overloaded. And it can even mean not going out on the town if you know that staying home is what you really need. And that is an amazing analogy. The dog is going to take a dump no matter where.
Yeah, I swear a lot in my book, I feel like, but it gets the point across. The dog needs to take a shit. That dog doesn't care where it takes a shit. It needs to take a shit. If there's a fence up, there's a saying that good fences make for good neighbors.
Yep.
You can say the same thing for boundaries. You can say the exact same thing. I'm not talking about putting up a wall, I'm not talking about blocking everything and everyone out, but
Yep.
you know what things are triggers for you and what things aren't good for your mental health. And sometimes just putting a fence up is the easiest thing. And by a fence, I just mean a boundary. Like, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. Or I could do that, but maybe later. Or, this doesn't work for me. There's lots of things that you can do to set a boundary with someone or something. And those things are so important. They are so important. And I think we forget that we have that option, but we always have the option to choose. So, I hope it's a good reminder for people for sure.
It is, because you're not cutting somebody out completely. You're not cutting out something completely, like you just said. You may just be doing it under a different time frame or whatever. You can still walk through a gate or you can jump over the fence. It's not a total blockage, right?
Yeah.
And so
It's just
understanding
giving
what,
yourself a little bit of space, right?
yeah,
And sometimes that's a great thing.
yeah. So that was really amazing. You go into a bunch of, I want to touch on this. Most of the farmer suicides are male. Um, I don't know the numbers between men and women's mental health. That doesn't really matter. But when we look at history and we look at wartime journalists, I was this when I was early in my not early in my journey. This is when I was just writing. I do some writing for today's Trucking. Um, then one of the editors told me that journalists that go over in wartime nowadays they're given training on how to deal with the PTSD and stuff that comes afterwards because they're right there with the soldiers. And they found that print journalists survive much better than videographers. And they say because the print guys are always writing it down, writing out their feelings, and the photojournalists are just there filming everything. They edit stuff, but they're not writing things out. They're not expressing themselves. They're just letting the pictures tell the story. And I think I want to get your take on this. With most of the suicides are male in farming, and is that because as males we do not want to talk about our feelings? We do not want to speak out about it as much. It's really hard to get guys to talk about this and to accept it.
Yeah. I can't talk about being a guy because I'm not, but I can talk to the subject because when we look at the numbers, there's been surveys done, and especially in the agriculture world, about who is struggling the most. And the numbers do show that women are struggling more than men, but I don't buy that. And the reason I say that is because I think you're right. I think there's a denial in the male group to admit that they have problems, number one. And number two, to talk about them. So I agree with you. I think, and I'm not for one second saying I know anything. This is purely opinion, but I agree with you, and I think that there is more pressure on men to be tough. I think it exists. I think it's in our culture. And I think that that stops men from talking about it. And a lot of the time that translates into higher suicide rates. Absolutely. I think that women have a huge role to play, though, in that very fact. Because if it is the case that women will talk more openly about things, we are really good at getting men to talk. We're really good at prying, really good at asking questions, really good at all those things. So perhaps women might be the solution. I'm not saying that men can't do the exact same thing, and gosh, I hope that they will. But maybe women are going to be the ones to start those conversations, to continue those conversations, to pry when maybe they need to. Is something wrong? Right? So, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think that we are seeing the suicide rates of men higher. Um, and perhaps we can counter that with more discussions and a change in the culture. And that's a lot of what, I hope to see happen.
I think women being the big part of the solution is absolutely key. I know in trucking, uh, I attribute more women truck drivers as the reason for so many improvements in our industry. And why is that? That's because when you have a woman come into your company as a driver, they do not want to put up with bullying. They do not want to put up with just suck it up and go, no matter if you don't feel like it's not good enough. They're not going to put up with equipment not being up to standard. Women do not want to put themselves at risk. As guys, like, oh, be a man, go out there and just get her done anyway. Like everything hanging off and falling off, and oh, look at what we did. Look at what we did. Yeah, you're an idiot. But women won't
I
put
don't
up with that.
necessarily I don't necessarily think it's an idiot. I think men are really good at taking risks, and I think men are really good at doing those things. So I think there's benefits to both being men and women. But I think that
Yes.
you're right. I think you're right. I think the women are pushing for some changes in the industry, and that's a great thing too.
Yeah. And it nowadays we have much better equipment, washroom facilities. I think it was a Peterbilt dealer in Yellowknife when I was working up there. They had this real hole of a washroom facilities, and they hired a woman mechanic, and she's like, "I ain't going there. I'm gonna go down the street, and if you don't want me to leave my job, then you're gonna have to
Yeah.
make a nicer washroom." And they had to.
She just made a fence.
She made a fence. Yeah.
Yep. There's her boundary. Get me a nice washroom or I'm not working here. Good for
Yep.
her.
Yep. And
Yeah.
that's, we should be that yin and yang. We should have celebrate the differences because that's what makes everything better. We shouldn't all be the same, right? That's how I look at it. We should use our own skills and, some people are an empath, some people are not, everybody's a little different. We need everybody and we need to try and understand each other so we can
Yeah.
make things better for everybody.
Absolutely. Understanding is a great word, and you said it right. And understanding. Um, we can't be compassionate to each other if we don't have understanding. And and that's really important in mental health because I think that listening is important, understanding is important. Um, and so we have to respect everyone. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or whatever differences you might think you have. We're all human. We all deal with the same things, right?
Yeah, I I got into that at work recently. Somebody was saying something about certain people don't think as well as other people. I'm like, really? How can you be like that? Like, it's a matter of education. It's a matter of trying to figure out how to get each person motivated. We are all, I mean, how in these days can it not be so clear to people that we have different skin colors, but we're all people. We're all the same in that way. And some of us have different opportunities, some have different ways of doing things. It was really not a not a good morning that morning. I said some
Well,
choice words to him, and yeah,
part of the thing about mental health is, and I write about this in my book, speaking up when you know you need to, right? And
yeah,
so it's great that you have those conversations, and they're not easy. They are tough,
no,
but it's great when you do speak up about them because that's what's going to make it better, right?
yeah, yeah. So, looking back to your 12-year-old self, you talk a lot about nutrition in your book and gut health and things like that. And I bring this up because there's a lady I've interviewed, and she's a nutritionist, and she talks about a lot of our mental health issues stem back to that. back to our gut health and back to what we're putting in our bodies and the exercise and different things. And this may be something tough to answer, but what could have been done differently with your 12-year-old self not wanting to go to church, um, and feeling all these anxieties? Was there a key to nutrition or other things there that wasn't you couldn't see at the time?
Um, we ate really well. Everything we ate was homemade. I can say, could there been improvements to my nutrition? Yeah, probably. We've learned a lot in the last 30, 40 years about how to eat better. For sure there was some things. Um, my 12-year-old self, though, honestly, probably would have done a lot better with a counselor, a therapist, somebody to talk me through things. My parents were good supports. My friends were good supports, and sometimes we need more than that. Um, I never had a counselor until I was an adult, and honestly, it has been life changing. So I think that may have made a difference as well. Yeah, I
Uh,
think that might have been the biggest piece of the puzzle. But
I have a friend whose daughter is 12, and this is real life. She just turned 13 actually, but 12. And she's realized she has mental health issues and has been taking steps to get help. And she's spent some time recently in different places to try and get that help. And I keep telling my friend that that is so amazing that this 12-year-old girl knows she needs help beyond what she's getting right now. And to have that clarity for herself. I mean, it's tough. It's really, really tough. She's a but amazing, amazing young lady. And I've told her how impressed I am with her that she knows she needs help and she's working on getting the help and she's working on stuff. Isn't that amazing?
it is amazing. And that's what I love to see, honestly. These changes that are happening, your podcast is part of it. Hopefully, my book is part of it. Just normalizing that mental health is something that some people need help with, and normalizing all the things that could help you. I also touch on the fact that Kids Help Phone has been around for many, many years. The rates of using that service went up substantially during COVID. Kids were using the Kids Help Phone a lot. And what a great thing, right? I love that we have that resource, but I also love that people are using it more because you can have all the resources in the world, but if you don't feel comfortable accessing them, it's not going to do you any good. And so I think you're right. It is great to see that kids are getting the help they need. The other key to that is self awareness, though. She has been taught to be self aware. I'm not feeling good. This is my mental health that I'm not feeling good. Like for so long when I was 12, I didn't know. I didn't know why I was feeling like I wanted to commit suicide. I didn't understand. So I think that self awareness piece is really amazing. And that is great for kids and adults. If you are self aware and you're listening to your body and you're listening to how you're feeling, and then kind of analyzing what have I done differently or why am I feeling this way and what could I do to get help. I mean, that's huge. That's a huge piece. So good on her. And that is great to hear. I don't want to hear anybody struggling, but I do want to hear that they're doing something about it and they're finding help when they need it. And that's great.
Yeah, I'm always just so excited by her and see what she's doing and everything. And um, I wasn't gonna do this. I hope it's okay with you. I like writing. I've done writing for a long time. Hated poetry as a guy in high school. because that was a girly thing or something. I don't know. I didn't like. And there's a
Was
lot
it
of
your thing?
No, and there's a lot of poetry I still don't like. But I write a. My favorite stuff to do is writing poetry these days. As far as writing goes, I write for today's trucking and truck news and stuff like that. And I love doing that. But I wrote a poem for this girl. So when she came
Awesome.
back from her latest thing, then um, I wrote this poem and I gave it to her through her mom. And I'd like to read it, if that's all right
Sure.
with
I want
you.
to hear it. I want to hear it. Yeah.
So I called it You, a poem for Megan and all other mental health warriors. You matter. You are loved. You are strong. You are beautiful. You are smart and very caring. Words, many times just words. In the darkest hours, whispered or implied, given through a hug or a look. They feel like just words. The hurt and angst feel so deep and consuming. Those words feel like fog when you want to drink. You don't feel like any of those words. How can someone say them? Why don't you see them in yourself? Nothing comes easy, and there's the challenge. Search for those words in you. Dig deep. Those are words of action, of working. You know that because you're here. Even in your darkest hours, others see those words. You never give up. You push on. You work to get better. Don't close your eyes. Open them and look as if you're looking at your best friend. You are loved, strong, beautiful, smart, and caring. You matter. You.
That's
So that
amazing.
was.
That is a wonderful poem for somebody who doesn't want to write poetry.
Yeah. I, yeah. I,
Yeah, I think that um that poem is going to be important to her. And when you're struggling, I think the most important thing is feeling seen and feeling heard. And so that is a way that she can know she was seen and she was heard. And those connections are what people really need. So that's important. That's another thing I wanted to touch on was a lot of the kids now are dealing with instead of face-to-face interactions, they're behind a screen and those connections aren't the same, maybe don't fill your cup the same as being face to face with people. And we're seeing a lot of change in the way things in everyday's, I get the way you operate. When you go to the store, you use self-checkout and you're not face to face with someone. Or if you're doing business, sometimes you can't always pick up the phone. You have to talk to a robot, customer service, or there's a lot of things that we don't get those face to face connections anymore. So, feeling seen and feeling heard and having a face to face interaction with somebody is super important.
yeah. It is very important. Yeah. So, I like to close off things by asking a favorite trip or epic trip or whatever you can think of one time you're somewhere and when you're sitting around a campfire and you're shooting the breeze with people, friends, and this story comes up. Wait till you hear what happened here. What kind of a story can you give us, Llewellyn?
So when you ask me to think about a story about a road trip, oh my gosh, I'm such a traveler. I love traveling. So I have so many stories. I'm like, what can I tell him? But this one is hilarious, so I will tell you it. When I was 19, I went on exchange to a university in England. I was there for 3 months. And I went to York St. John's College. So York is about 3 hours train ride north of London. That's where I was at school. On the weekends, my friends and I would tour around to see parts of England while we were there. And I had a girlfriend she was from Pennsylvania, and we were planning a trip to go see Stonehenge and a few other things. So, Stonehenge involves a train ride down to London, 3 hours south, and then east. I'm not sure if it's an hour east or maybe more than that. It was a big trip for us to go. We had planned this weekend trip. We went and saw Stonehenge. We went and did our touring around, saw what we wanted to see. And we had plans to get home that night. And in England, the trains don't run after a certain hour. And I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I'm not sure. We had to get back to York by a certain time. Otherwise, we weren't going to make it. So we had planned out our whole trip. We knew exactly how we were going to get there and how we were going to get back and what train we were going to take. When we left to go home, we hopped on the train. We were on our way back to London, and then we had to switch trains in London. We got on our train. We were happy, had a long day. We were visiting. We get to our destination, and they say, "You can get off the train now. We have arrived." And we look around, and we are not in London. We are not even close to London. We are on the most southern point of England in some little town at the end of the tracks, and the train was closed for the night. And we didn't realize we had gotten on the wrong train until we got to this place. So we get off the train. There is nowhere for us to go because we don't have a car. The train's not running. And we're on the most southern point of England and we are not getting back to York that night. So her and I had to scrounge up a place to stay, which luckily we found a bed and breakfast. Um, and it was less than ideal, but we had a place to stay for the night, and we made our way back the next day on the proper train back to London, and we were a little late for school, I think, on Monday. But yeah, it was hilarious because first of all, we didn't know what train we were on. We thought we were on the right one until we
Yeah.
were at our destination and it wasn't London. So that's what happens when you're 19 and you're having fun and you don't really pay attention that much. So
Yeah.
yeah, we all laugh about that one. I always laugh and say taking trains in Europe is interesting. It's an interesting experience. And so got to make sure you navigate that properly if you're going anywhere.
Even if it's the same language, you can still screw up, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
If you're in
Yeah.
Germany or Russia or something, and you can be, well, I didn't read the sign right, or the translation wasn't proper. Although, and I bug my English friends
Exactly.
that sometimes listening to them is I need a translator too. So
Yeah,
yeah,
the accent can be thick. That might have been the problem for sure. I'm not sure.
yeah. If you're running east of London, you're probably getting closer to Wales. So a little thicker accent out there. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
pretty
is
good.
that west, I guess. West of London. East, west. Yes. Sorry, said that
West,
wrong.
right? West.
Stonehenge is
Yep,
west.
yep.
Yeah, I said east,
You go east, you end up in the water,
but
I
you're right.
guess.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to go that.
So anyway, it's been a blast, Llewellyn. Um,
It's been awesome talking to you. Thank you for having me. It's so great to connect with you. And I know that when you reached out to me on Twitter, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome. I think we're going to connect." And sometimes you just know that click's going to happen, and it did today. So I'm really happy to talk to you.
it it's been a while. Like I think I first messaged you in early summer, and I was like, "Hey,
Yeah,
we need to
thank you
talk
for being
sometime."
patient.
Well, I think that's like setting those boundaries again, right? You knew what was going to be best for you, and you had said a couple times, "Please give me some more time." I need the time, and here we are. And it's important for
Yeah,
me as somebody that understands some of this. I need to also respect that boundary, and instead of keep pushing and pushing, and we need to do it now or we're not going to do it. And that can happen. I've had that happen to me. I'm sure you've had that happen to you as well. Sometimes we think we're the important one and we're not. So Anyway,
I think we're all important, but yeah, respecting each other's um,
yeah, I
space and
mean,
time is a good thing too.
your story is the important part of my podcast. It's not my podcast that is the really important part. It's the story of you that's important. And so I want to say here at the end that thank you everybody for listening. Check out um, the book that's coming out. I'll let you say the whole title again, Llewellyn. Give us a little plug again for your book
Sure, it's a long one.
when it's coming out.
Yeah, so my book is it's coming out February 7th, and my book is called Rooted: How to Stay Small Town Strong When Life Gets Hard and How You Can Too.
And where can we find it on February 7th?
You can find it on my website, lewellynmelnyk.com. Pre-orders are up now, and so you can do that. Or you can wait a couple of weeks and you'll find it on Amazon.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a blast to everybody. Reminder to like and share the podcast and get it out there. And make sure you fill your happy tank. Cheers, everybody.
Right.